Good day and welcome to today's Capital One Teachable Tuesday webinar hosted by NAIA-SIDA. Today's webinar topic is how to connect with local media outlets, TV, newspaper, online during COVID-19. Please welcome our presenters, CBS affiliate station WKYT Sports Director Brian Milam and Georgetown News-Graphic Sports Editor Kal Oakes. Guys, thank you for being here. I'm Jenny Elder, Sports Information Director at Georgetown College in Georgetown, Kentucky, and will serve as the webinar moderator. We appreciate you joining us today. Before we begin, we would like to say a quick thank you to our corporate partner, Capital One, presenting sponsor for COSIDA's Continuing Education Series. As a reminder, this on-demand webinar will be posted later today on COSIDA.com and COSIDA's YouTube channel. Please invite your colleagues to listen and watch the on-demand webinar as it is free to everyone. We encourage you to submit any questions you might have. Place your questions and comments in the chat box, and your questions will be addressed throughout the webinar. Here we will start with Kal and Brian telling us about themselves and their media background. That will flow into questions from the Education Committee, which we thought would be a good starting ground for the basics. And as we get your questions, we will get those as well. Kal, why don't you get us started by telling us about yourself and your background in the media profession?
Certainly. Well, thank you for having me today. First of all, as you said, I have been the sports editor at the Georgetown News-Graphic since July of 2016. Before that, I spent my entire career at a daily paper in northern New England, the Lewiston Sun-Journal in Maine. I actually started there in high school, so that was a 27-year run at one paper. Held just about every job in the department, including editor, for 4 years. Covered roughly 20 high schools, a bunch of small colleges, so have a lot of experience juggling those two things. For the purposes of this discussion, I was also the media coordinator at a racetrack up there for about 5 years, a stock car racetrack. So have some experience with these issues of contacting, working with media, and trying to get our material published, broadcast, what have you. So I've been on both sides of it.
And Brian, the same question.
I started January 2nd, 1998 in a small station in Hazard, Kentucky, southeast Kentucky, called WYMT. And YMT covers a lot more than most people think about when you think of Eastern Kentucky. We had in the vicinity of 70 high schools. We had at the college level, U-Pike, which was then Pikeville College, Alice Lloyd College, Union College, University of the Cumberlands, and University of Virginia Wise, Morehead State, touched on EKU. We did a little bit of everything with only a 3-person office, and really got my feet wet and a baptism by fire, so to speak. I was in Eastern Kentucky for 12 and a half years and moved to Lexington 10 years ago. And I've been the sports director for the last 3 years at WKYT, where we cover UK is the #1 big blue beast, as I call them sometimes, but we also certainly have Georgetown, and we have Transy, and we have Center, and EKU, and Morehead State, and Midway, and places in between. So it's been, there is not a lot of sleep, as Kal can attest to, when it comes to the months, certainly between August and April. Things do slide down a little bit in May, June, and July, but then we pick it up with thoroughbred racing and baseball and softball and things in between.
And staying with you, Brian, what are some tips on making initial contact with media from the smaller colleges' perspective?
Well, it's just saying hello. That's the one thing I learned being in Eastern Kentucky. I'm from Louisville originally, and when I got to Eastern Kentucky, I didn't know a lot of people, but I had to introduce myself and hand out business cards the way a blackjack dealer in Las Vegas would. I mean, I was handing them out to anybody that would pay any attention. And basically I said, look, I'm from 3 hours away or 4 hours away. Tell me about your school. Tell me about anything. One thing I am blessed with is a good memory, and I can remember the first stories, the first people that you meet. And if you meet one person, you're going to meet two, and you're going to meet three, and that's just the way it's going to go. But I think a lot of times in the social media age, a lot of people just assume, well, I assume that so and so is following me, or if I follow them, well, that's good enough, you know. But it's relationships that you build, and just because there's a story you might not think is all that great, somebody else may think it's an award-winning piece that has yet to be uncovered. But it's just getting up and saying hello. When I come to a Georgetown College basketball game, and you can attest to this, Jen, I always come right to media row at some point, or press table, and say, hey, 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 just so you don't forget about me.
Oh, we couldn't forget about you. And Cal, from the perspective, what's the best way to kind of connect in with you guys?
Well, just to follow up on what Brian said, I think with social media, with all the different ways you can contact someone today, I think sometimes those lists can become outdated. I would say my biggest tip would be to find out what people's primary preferred method of contact is. People know they can usually reach me in a variety of ways, whether it's my personal email, whether it's text, call, Twitter, Facebook. There are a million ways to get a hold of somebody, but the key, I think, is to find out, and it's juggling a lot, obviously, to find out what each person on your list, what their preferred method of contact is. I think from my experience, even on my end, I've found that a lot of email addresses are dead. So sometimes you got to figure out which of those need to be crossed off the list and replaced with something else. I just think that's a key is maintaining that open line of communication, so you know you can reach somebody at a moment's notice, because obviously with the news cycle being more 24/7 than ever, it's really important to have that immediate or close to immediate method of contact for people. For me, if I don't know something's going on, it's kind of what Brian said. People sometimes assume you know something's going on. And everything, especially in COVID-19, is changing. Games get scheduled, canceled. You know, I can picture this winter teams being on a bus going somewhere, having that game called off, and that bus going somewhere else immediately to play a game on 30 minutes notice. May not happen at the college level, but it'll happen at the high school level. So to anybody who's dealing with the media, I would say know how to reach them quickly.
And then, Brian, you have a long history. You kind of touched on it a little bit of covering NAIA teams and even national tournaments. And in your time at Hazards YMT and now at KYT, is there a difference in how maybe a Georgetown, Asbury, Midway, Trancey Center approaches you, or, you know, the TV aspect versus maybe, you know, UVA Wise or Pikeville in the Hazard market? And if so, what's your advice in the different markets?
Well, when I was in Hazard, you have to understand also back then, texting, there was no Facebook at that time. Facebook started in what, 09, something like that. So I only had 1 year of Facebook in Eastern Kentucky, 1 or 2. Twitter was just in its infancy. So there was a lot of things just starting a decade ago or a little longer. So back then it was phone calls, and it was texting on the BlackBerry back then, and it was doing things we don't do nearly as much of now. You know, with Twitter, you can follow, I don't know what the limit is, you can follow as many as you want, and you can get that instant. Every time Cal is at a Scott County football game or a Georgetown game or anything, bloop, bloop, oh, there's Cal, he's at that game today. So things were a lot different back then. You had to rely on people helping you out a little bit. Now you can get a shot of 1,000 people at once, as we've seen on Zoom meetings and the webinar that we're on now. At Kentucky, following Kentucky athletics compared to other schools, it's really the same thing. But for the smaller schools to stand out, they have got to not do exactly what the big guys are doing, because everybody knows that if you're covering UK, Louisville, the University of Florida, SEC teams, ACC, they're going to get a lot of eyes on them. So what are you going to do a little bit differently to stand out? And that may be a simple text instead of, or a direct message on Twitter, Facebook, whatever your social medium of choice may be. And now everybody is in the same boat. And this is the thing that fascinates me. No matter the school you cover, no matter the size of the division it is, if it's NCAA, D2, D3, NAIA, whatever, you have a voice, but how are you going to get that voice to that person? And I think at the beginning, it certainly goes back to just sending an email that stands out. Hey, just this is to you and you only. I want to say, hi, my name is so-and-so. What can we do? What can I do to help you and you help us? Because like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of stories to be told. It's easy to go shoot highlights. It's easy to get a post-game interview. It's easy just to go to a game. But I want to know what's going on behind the scenes with a kid who's overcome a lot of struggles that maybe the University of Kentucky kid has not had to deal with before. They are, the higher the school, usually the more tight-lipped they are about certain things. So if you want to be on TV, if you want to get your name out there, hey, just send the TV stations a note, or the radio stations, whomever it may be. When I was in Hazard, we were the only show in town, so everybody came to you initially. Being in Lexington, there's 3 stations here, and we are in Northern Kentucky as well. So if you're a Northern Kentucky athlete, you also got the Cincinnati stations. So, but I just think it goes back to relationships and what are you going to do a little bit differently to stand out a little bit more? And usually that is direct contact.
And Kal, with print media, where you are the sole person covering local youth sports, 3 middle schools, 2 high schools in a town that's driven by a lot of those categories, and especially when the advertising dollars are going that way, how does a Georgetown College, grab your attention or work with you best?
Playing a lot of games during the high school's downtime now, but seriously, that helps. Just a couple of home games this past week was nice. But you're right, and I go back to my earlier background in this business. Similar situation. Had a market where there were, as I said, 20 high schools, probably 2 D3s. NAIA wasn't really a thing in New England, but 2 NCAA D3 programs, a JUCO. And a lot of times that's the thing to go. If you have to drop the ball on something, unfortunately, it is those smaller colleges. But as Brian said, there's stories to be told there. And a lot of times maybe we don't have the freedom to get to those games as much as I try to. Sometimes during the busiest part of the year, that's not going to happen. So the contact that you all can make, regardless of what method it is, to get one of those stories out there that maybe I don't know about. And sometimes it can even be assumed, as you said with UK, I think there's so much coverage in the UK that if there's a story to be told there, I think there's the assumption that people already know it. And maybe that trickles down to the small college level as well. But sometimes I could go to every home football game and not, I think of the Cody Casey story at Georgetown College a few years ago. The fact that you all promoted that and kind of fed that a little bit to us as the local media, and we were able to jump on a little bit where we may not have known the whole backstory, even going to every home football game. So there are examples like that at every college in America. So, and Twitter is a powerful medium for me. That's probably my preferred method of contact and the way that I advance my own brand. So I guess I'm a little biased in that area, but I look at, for example, there was a high school game the other night, Lexington Catholic and Covington Catholic. Somebody tweeted a highlight at SportsCenter Top 10. There it was an hour or two later on ESPN. And if a high school can do that, and I've seen that multiple times from Lexington Market, there's no reason a Georgetown College, any school in the Mid-South Conference, any school in America can't do the same thing just with a simple, quick video clip on Twitter.
And Kal, you kind of talked about and touched on there the restrictions of, okay, looking at, you have 10 home games going on all on the same night and having to choose. And sometimes the small college games are the ones that kind of get left off that list. But then how can we get you print ready material? Just in my near decade experience in newspaper, how important it was with certain things to get print ready things so that it's much easier when you get back in the office at 11 p.m. with a midnight deadline.
Yeah, it is definitely an advantage, I think, for those in your side of the business who have been on the other side, who know that, because it is vitally important. Plug and play, copy and paste material is valuable to me. As you mentioned, I'm kind of I don't want to say I'm a one-man band, but I do a large percentage of what is the sports section of my paper. I have some help with photography, some great help, and on the video side and photographic side, but the copy is 99% me. And so I'm reliant on that, especially if I have a tight deadline, if a game is played on a Saturday and I have to be there, or on a Sunday and I have to get it in the paper for Monday afternoon for our print deadline. I may not have time to go back and do all that legwork myself. So I probably am going to be relying on whatever story you all can put on your website. So that means AP style. It means having a familiarity with that. It means having something that's written in an inverted pyramid style. So the score and the leading scorers are at the top, and then everything else kind of fills in below that. A quote from a coach or a key player is awesome if that can be included. And I think also just having your website current. If you're, maybe your schedule is too tight to have that sort of thing, that quick story available, but if the stats, if I can link to the stats and I know where to find them, and I can do that story myself in a quick turnaround, that's a valuable resource too. So I think there are multiple ways to accomplish it. The biggest key is keeping that website current, because I can be pretty resourceful if I can find things easily on your website.
And Brian, a similar question, like let's take a Friday night with 120 counties in Kentucky and exponential high schools, and you guys have all Friday night football, and Georgetown has a soccer game. What can we do to get you broadcast ready clips or whatnot, so that it's easier for you guys when you get back in the office at 9:55 for a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock news segment?
Well, the one thing about TV, and I can't speak to what Kal goes through, but it's basically a machine gun. Bam, 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 bam. TV, you have to squeeze it all in about 10 minutes, depending on the show. Or if it's a 6 o'clock newscast, we only get 2.5 minutes. So, odds are it's not going to make the 6 o'clock unless it's an important game. One thing I have seen over the last 20 years is when people will send you highlights, they'll send so many that, okay, well, where do I start? Where are the true highlights of the game? Because if the game goes triple overtime, I don't care what happened in the first quarter. That really doesn't, you have to get straight to the heart of the matter. And, there are times when, if we are fortunate enough to stay long enough at a game, and it's going to be funny when they say, we'll pick it up in the fourth quarter. Oh my gosh, well, what the heck? We're tied at 42 in the fourth quarter. Oh my gosh. So now we have to cut through. It's like a steak. You have to cut the fat off of it, Get that part. Now, where's the real meat of what I want? And for television, that meat is the final play, the final score, the great play that stood out. And there are times when we will get video and it's just so long, and okay, you sent, let's say, 5 minutes of video, but there's no shot sheet, so I don't know who number 24 is for Asbury, and I don't know who number 20 is. Now I got to go look that up. And yeah, you're right. Now we've got a deadline. With the internet, there is no deadline, but there is for television, and there is for some places that still produce a newspaper, a smaller town newspaper. So to help television, if you have a game that, send 5 plays. Kal Oakes with the slam dunk, Jenny Elder 3-pointer that made it 50-50. And then you go, here's play 3, and it's Joe Johnson with the half-court shot to send it to a second overtime. Just give me the bam, 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 the big bullet points, and we'll worry about what happened in the first quarter and the second quarter for the write-up. We'll worry about that after the show's over.
And from both of you, and we'll start with and stay with Brian on this, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see a small college SID make with local media, maybe?
One thing is for a deadline, for an 11 o'clock game. Hey, we were there at 7. The game started at 7. And if you did not, let's say, tweet out the final score with the leading scorers, and it's not on your website, well, now where do I go to find it? I've called the SID, can't get a hold of him or her. I've tried to call the coach, since usually the smaller the school, the more personal relationship you can have with a coach normally. Gosh, I can't get a hold of him or her. Now what do I do? Do I know a parent? Okay, now we start scurrying and trying to find kids on Twitter. Hey, we just won 75-73. Okay, it's 70. Oh, it was the wrong score? Crap. Okay. Now what do we do? It's just getting straight to the point of, for TV now, I like a great article, but for television, we don't have time to go through a great article to figure out what happened. So the best thing for an SID at a game is have a score ready to go. As soon as the clock hits 0, bang it out to however many outlets there are, and then maybe send another a Twitter message or even a text if you do that with, hey, Smith scored 16, Johnson had 14, just straight to the point. And I know that there's one SID that is really a good fella, but I get lost sometimes in the article. Well, what happened? The score's in the third graph. I don't need the score in the third graph. I need it in the first graph or in the first sentence.
Hey, Kal, same question.
Yeah, it's similar things. It's, and it gets back to the print ready part and what Brian was talking about, the score being buried, the score being unavailable on short notice, because as valuable as social media is, I follow 5,000 people back that follow me, so sometimes those things get lost in the shuffle. So the more the merrier, and the quicker after a game, the more I can process. Okay, I need to put that on my radar for the next print edition. And yeah, just some schools more than others, in my experience, are better with the immediacy of their website. I can go on the Georgetown College website within minutes after a game, and I can access the box score. I can access the DAC stats play-by-play. That's golden to me. There are a lot of schools that don't necessarily do that, or at least I have had a harder time finding it. So if you can link to that through your schedule, through your homepage, whatever it is, after a game, get that information out there, so you can put the major stuff out there, but I can dig deeper if I want to for something more involved for print. Or if it's an out-of-town school, I want to find out what my local athlete did, so I can maybe put them in a notebook style thing or something. So yeah, just anything that can make it more user-friendly on a short turnaround is good.
And we had an audience question. Cal, how effective, you kind of mentioned over and over again, Twitter, is it for, some of your Scott County athletes who may go to play at Union or play at Alice Lloyd or play at, a school, Virginia Tech, per se. What if they, tag you in a Twitter post about the athlete? Is that beneficial or helpful as far as popping out as something to note in your paper, even though it's not in the local market, it's back home at least for that student athlete?
Yeah, it is 100% valuable, and I encourage people to do that. I encourage them, if they don't tag me or they don't even just share the tweet with me in my direct messages or something, just let me know. I don't take any offense to people trying to get my attention in 2 or 3 different ways. And yes, to get back to Twitter, Twitter is the easiest way for me to at least keep tab on where everybody is and what they're doing. So I at least have them in the back of my mind. Brian talked about his memory. I'm kind of the same thing, a little bit of an elephant in that way. So it's good. It's an advantage. It's a blessing and a curse. But I do kind of know where every athlete in my area is, at least, whether or not they're playing, who they're playing for, stats wise, what they're up to. So if they can tag me with any accomplishment of those athletes, once they become aware that I exist, and it's on me. A lot of this webinar is geared toward, okay, what can schools do to communicate, but it's on us too to kind of reach out. And during those downtimes, you talk about, summer's the rare downtime. That's a good time for us to connect with those schools where we know we have an athlete and say, hey, this is what you can do for me, and what can I do for you to make it easier as well. So it is a two-way street, but yeah, to the extent that schools can use Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, it's a lot more immediate than email. Anybody that's still using my office email to communicate with me is probably it's probably behind the 8 ball, right? Or I'm leaving them behind the 8 ball by not telling them there's a more efficient manner.
Let me add one other thing, if you don't mind. I was at a high school football game this past Friday, and this is high school and it's not college, but the same principle applies. I am walking out of my first game to get to my second game, and a parent, a parent stops me and says, hey, how can I get TV coverage of my child signing this Wednesday? And I went, well, here's a business card. Send me a text, give me the information. You ought to see the information that was sent to me. It's not just your normal high school athlete. I mean, and the school, for whatever the reason, hasn't said to the local TV stations and the Lexington Herald Leader locally, hey, check out this kid and all the accomplishments. And he signs tomorrow, and I'm just looking at the text. I mean, he's going to commit or sign with either South Carolina, TCU, Texas A&M, or the University of Houston. And he's a 2-time All-American in AAU. He's a high school All-American. And because he's in a track and field situation, maybe some places don't look at said sport as, well, I don't know if that's really noteworthy or not. If it's not basketball, it's not football. We're a baseball school over here. Hey, this kid in this high school, and I sarcastically sent a text to the athletic director and said, hey, where have you been sitting on this kid? I mean, this is amazing stuff. And we had a local high school kid a few years ago who Dwight Stones, who was in the Olympics for a high jump back in the early 80s. He flew into Lexington to work with this kid. Well, we got the inside scoop. Now we're talking to an Olympic medalist about a high school kid we knew nothing about a couple of weeks earlier because no one told us. And again, I go back to the earlier quote I made. People assume sports people know everything, which we obviously don't. And things can get buried in an email. I know I get emails from at least a dozen colleges and universities. And if that headline of that email doesn't stand out, you may just not even think about that email or skim through it and miss what you really want to see, which is that diamond in the rough story about a kid whose accolades are off the charts, but no one knows about it.
Yeah,
Well, and
yeah.
go ahead, Cal.
I was going to say, just to follow up on that, you had asked earlier where Georgetown College stands in a market like mine, and just to echo what Brian said a little bit. Probably where the school stand, and this is probably true in a lot of small markets. Like, I follow football and men's basketball certainly more than anything else, in part because of the success those programs have had nationally and because of the crowds at those games. Now, I may not have the time to get to some other sports, whether it's tennis, track and field, you name it. A lot of the ones that, just those are more likely to fall through the cracks. And if you can, whether it's sending that resume of that person with something that gets my attention like that or whatever, that's certainly a valuable thing to do, to say, hey, we have an athlete in this sport that's not only doing this on the court, but doing this off it, and would be a fantastic special interest, human interest story. And that gives me a running start, because otherwise I may not even know that person exists.
Well, and maybe kind of what I'm hearing, and back to the question on, what maybe some of our biggest mistakes is that maybe it's not that we're assuming everything, but maybe we're assuming that, well, UK has Alabama coming to town and KYT is not going to want, a reminder that Georgetown College also was playing that day or whatever at home against Lindsey Wilson. And so, can you guys speak to that on maybe encouraging us more that reaching out to you guys is a good thing and figuring out a way between you guys?
Yeah, I mean, never be shy about any of that is my advice. Especially at a local community oriented paper such as mine. I mean, we don't do any UK at all. For a time we had Larry Vought's column. We had, we'd run press releases sometimes. I don't have the space or the time for a lot of that anymore. We just realized that, honestly, other people are going to provide that. That's not our niche. So we're gonna go with high school and with Georgetown College, and we're gonna ride or die with that. So chances are a lot of the people watching this have papers like that in their area. I'm sure I'm not a lone wolf there. So don't back down. Don't worry about what UK is doing. Don't worry about what the pro team, if there's one in the market, is doing. Just be you and assume that your story is the biggest one in the world, because maybe it is. And if it's not that day, if it's not that week, maybe they put it on their list and come out a week later with something when things slow down.
One thing Eastern Kentucky University has done, they're only 25 minutes away from Lexington, for those who don't know. They would have their football press conference on a Monday. Well, UK has their press conference on a Monday. And they realized, hey, we're not going to win that fight. So we have to pick our battles where we can win. And so they called and said, hey, what day would be better? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, what? I said Tuesday, because Kentucky is going to dominate Monday because they just played the big game Saturday, maybe Sunday if it's basketball, you never know. Or they have a huge game Monday night if it's basketball. So you're going to get overshadowed. So why not stand out in a way nobody else is going to? And so they started having on Tuesdays at 11 or noon, maybe, their press conference, either recapping Saturday, getting ready for the next game. So that way they can stand out, because on Monday, they're not going to, and they realize that now. And then it allows us to highlight them on Tuesday, a little bit on Wednesday, maybe skip Thursday because Kentucky is playing again if it's basketball season, and then come back around to them on Friday, setting up the game they have Friday night or on Saturday. So you have to, like I said, you're not going to, if you're East Tennessee State, you're not going to bump heads with Tennessee and Knoxville. Mm-hmm. So you have to pick your fight. But if you are a smaller paper or a smaller station, you can forego the big school and say, look, I know who butters the bread here, and that's our local community. Because when you break down the state, everybody is their own community. Louisville is a community, and Lexington is, and Bowling Green and Georgetown. And that's what I love about the smaller papers and the smaller websites, because they have stuff that will stand out compared to the Lexington Herald Leader, the Louisville Courier Journal, the Cincinnati papers. You're going to get, for my money, you're going to get your better stuff from the smaller schools, the smaller papers, because they do have a niche. Everybody's got one.
And we have an audience question here. Do you media members still prefer getting box scores right away, or just having the box score posted online, tweeted out? Is that more effective?
I think everything is effective if it is targeted to somebody, because let's say, for TV, we've got 3 college football games that we're trying to deal with. We've got now that we've got the football basketball transition that we're all going in right now, you might forget about it. Like, oh yeah, what's that score again? Give it to me quick. Anything stand out? Yeah, Smith had 43. Oh gosh, yeah, okay. As long as it gets out and it's targeted, I don't think there's a problem if you text it, Twitter, email, whatever, as long as you do all of them, probably.
Yeah, I would say it's an and situation and not an either or situation. Definitely the more different ways I can see it or have it jog my memory later on, the better. It's definitely electronic at this point. There's no more paper box score being faxed like it was back in the day. But other than that, any method you use, even if it's an email with a link to the box score, that I'll find it.
And you guys kind of touched on this a little bit, but we're going to kind of zero in on this. Brian, there are larger markets that we have listening here, obviously, and I'm going to look at, let's say, Bristol, Tennessee, and you've got Virginia Tech and University of Tennessee. You've got the Redskins and the Tennessee Titans. You obviously have NASCAR, which is huge in that area, and you also have 5 or 6 small schools and 70 some high schools. What's your advice for a market like that with the TV stations may not be able to come to events, but simply getting something that inside your time constraints that works?
One thing that has exploded over the last couple of years is having schools do their own video. It doesn't have to be the lighting doesn't have to be perfect, even though the light should always be on your face, never behind you, because then you just see a silhouette. But hey, if student athlete ABC is over here doing this, why don't we do our own and promote it out that way? Because you are going to, with this new era of social media, you're going to hit a lot more eyes than you think. And then if you hit the eyes of the bigger stations, hey, did you see what's happening over there 50 miles to the east? Yeah, what's that about? Let's check into it a little bit more. I think schools should, if you don't have a TV department, find the way to get one. And that doesn't mean TV as what you see in the living room. The TV is on your phone now. The TV is on the laptop. The TV is on your personal computer, whatever. Find a way to get some editing material and at least initially get out the word. Check out what this player did. Like Kal mentioned, the Lexington Catholic, Covington Catholic game. It came down to a field goal that was blocked as time expired. The place erupts and everybody goes crazy. And there's a touchdown that wasn't expected. There's stuff. If you can do that during a game, why can't you do that away from the game and do an interview with said player? I was watching ESPN. I'm a YouTube-aholic from the past, the present, anything.
You and me both.
Yeah, I mean, I'm what my life was like before YouTube, I cannot figure it out, because I watched stuff from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, but then also saw something on Tom Brady, how he came about. His high school coach had him stand under the goalpost. He goes, "Hi, this is my quarterback, Tom Brady. If any coaches out there want any video, he's 6'4", 215 pounds, he's this and this and this. Don't ask, go send it to him." And you can do that with your state with your school Twitter account, your personal account. You can grab a lot of eyes initially doing that.
Yeah, I would echo those thoughts as well. Even though I'm on the print side, the video gets my attention. Anything you can do, just something to, especially if something is noteworthy and different, and is maybe even a little shocking, you know, that someone can do or did do, just gives me some ideas of how I would like to get it in print and portray it in print, or just lets me know that it's happening. And any game that's noteworthy during the season, yeah, I think of the Georgetown football game last year. It was what, 35-7 at one point, and then Georgetown came back and won. That's one of those examples of a game that might get any market's attention, because it's not something you see every day. A team coming back like that in the second half. So that's a place where video, post-game interviews even would be valuable through distributed through social media.
And we have another audience question. What advice do you each have for new SIDs during the pandemic? In the transitional time from, I've found it's hard to set aside time to meet with local media, but I'm assuming it's not too late to build those relationships.
Yeah, I would say this, no better time than this, really. I mean, that's one thing I've been able to do is during this time when there were a lot fewer games, especially in the spring and summer, evaluate where we're at. What do I want to do when this thing ends? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? And on your end of things, certainly developing those contacts, finding those people. A lot of times you know who they are, but like I said, maybe you don't know how to reach them most effectively. And this is a great time to have that conversation. Just reach out in a variety of different areas, and I'm sure they will reply, because we're all, you know, I know there was a time where I was desperate for stories, even though there were no games going on. I wondered, is there a story at Georgetown College? Is there an athlete who's affected by this somehow? And like I said, there's examples of that all over the country, any school in any market. So the extent that you can use downtime like that to, it's a two-way street. You're probably going to be helping the media on the other end without even realizing it, while trying to help yourself and build that network.
It's never too late to start anything, is what I've learned over the course of 22 years. And, you know, I'm just looking at my Twitter account. I've already picked up a few SIDs because of this that are not even in our coverage area. But it's never too late just to say, hey, I'm so-and-so. What do you think about this? There are things in the media guide. My dad is a sports memorabilia collector. And he said, hey, see if they have a media guide. You know, if you go to that UK, Alabama, see if they just get me one. You know, okay, Dad, no problem. But a lot of places don't do the media guides anymore because everything is online. And I've picked up several stories before that were not in the game notes, that were not, I stumbled across them by accident because I read through the media guide, and it's things that others knew. I take, for instance, in 2011, Center College in Danville, Kentucky, they had 6 or 7. Now think about this. They had 6 or 7 sets of twins on the same football team.
Oh, geez.
I mean, that's unheard of. And if memory serves, 2 of the assistant coaches were twins. I mean, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. And we found it by accident because we looked at the roster and said, well, they're from the same place. I guess they're brothers and so and so and so. Well, look at, wow. Then you start piecing it together. But if you're an SID, in my opinion, you should know your team better than the media. So it's your responsibility to say, look, we've got 5 sets of sisters and 5 brothers on the basketball and soccer teams and whatever. So you can help out a great deal just by knowing your team.
Yeah, and you talk about the media guide. Sometimes the best story on your team is one line that's buried in a biography of your second string middle linebacker. I mean, it could be, you just don't know what might trigger somebody to write or talk about in your school. So the more of that information that's out there, even if you think it's small, could be something, could be a cool story.
And I also realize when it comes to medical things, some people don't want to talk about a medical situation or a family situation. Certainly understandable. A couple of years ago, we were doing our high school football previews, and one of the coaches brought in his long snapper. And I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to work this guy into the season preview? He's a long snapper. Turns out he has what's called moya. It's called that's Japanese or Chinese for smoke on the brain. He had this rare disease, and it was amazing that only 0.001% of the world gets, and he had it. And I thought, wow, this is his own story right here. He was also, because of the strokes he had, partially blind. Holy cow. And then I said to the coach, I said, why didn't you tell me about this guy years ago? Because he was a senior at this point, and his long snapping skills were on par with a lot of Division I snappers, from the snap to release to catch. And I thought, my gosh, this is absolutely amazing. And it won our station some local awards out of it. And gosh, I just can't emphasize enough how many stories are buried because no one either thinks they're that important, or, well, I don't want to talk to them about that. Let them make that decision if they want to discuss, they've overcome cancer twice. They battled through that. There's a lot of ways and a lot of stories that I can't wait to dig up, but that comes from the people who know the teams a lot better than I do.
And an audience question, when you find those stories, what's the best way to pitch those to you guys?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just a quick reach out and just say, hey, this person, just kind of give me the skinny on it, maybe a couple of sentences, maybe a photo, maybe a video clip of them in a game if you've got it. Just gets my attention. But yeah, usually it's as simple as saying, hey, we got this kid. I've had coaches at every level say that to me over the years, and Brian's right. Those are the stories that, awards are what they are, but those are the ones that get notoriety in our business. It's not always us. It's usually the subject matter. So we're certainly eager to talk and write and about those people, but we just have to know about them. And you're right. Sometimes in this day and age, there's privacy laws or issues or whatever. But if you find out that kid or those parents are willing to tell their story, please let us know by any means possible.
What he said.
Well, guys, I want to thank you everybody for joining today's informative session, and a big thanks to our presenters, Kal and Brian, for the discussion and insights. A reminder that you can find this webinar on demand later this afternoon on COSIDA.com and COSIDA's YouTube channel. All the links to this will be on COSIDA.com website. All the on-demand options are free of charge. COSIDA is offering 3 other November live webinars. Next up in the COSIDA webinar series is a webinar in 2 days. On Thursday, join the live webinar for college division members, Bracing for Impact, strategies for supporting and hosting events in winter and spring 2021. This is part 1 of a 2-part webinar. COSIDA will host the same session for NCAA Division I members on Tuesday, November 17th. The time for each of those is 2 p.m. Eastern. NAIA-SIDA will return with a Teachable Tuesday webinar in December on communicating with ADs, coaches, and student athletes on challenges the spring semester will bring with potentially having sporting events every day of the week. Again, we thank everybody for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you.